What's up, everybody? It's Chad. We're back again with another episode of Ask Chad Grassy Logic. Today, I'm here with Duane Boise again. Thank you so much for joining me. He's going to give us some great updates and, tell us some cool things too. So thank you so much for joining me, brother.
Thanks, Chad. Great seeing you again.
Of course, thank you. And thank you for those that are going to be joining us on Twitch. I know it's a little quick for people to be pouring in, but I'm sure a couple will join in. Hopefully, Justin's usually the first one that comments.
He's usually the first one.
Yeah, so shout out to him. We're going to have a great episode today. We're going to be talking about what Duane's up to. If you guys aren't sure of who he is, what he is, I'll give him a second to, of course, refresh memories. And, of course, the new people, you get a fresh introduction as well. We're also going to be talking about what's been going on in Sunland Park with that novella down there, what I've been updating y'all on my socials about with that. So without further ado, Duane, please go ahead and introduce yourself and welcome back.
Thanks so much. Duane Boise. I'm the president and CEO of MMJ International Holdings, MMJ Biopharma Cultivation, and MMJ Biopharma Labs. The three companies work in unison. We applied, time goes by, I forget what year, but the DEA awarded us a Schedule I analytical lab license to handle the substances that we're manufacturing a pharmaceutical for. And we applied for the API bulk manufacturing registration, which is DEA speak for growing cultivation. And they've been screwing us around for probably 4 or 5 years now. Well, actually, it's longer than that. The first time we applied was 18, so you do the math.
Right.
I've been in court with them a bunch of times, and now we're getting down to showtime here soon.
Yeah.
MMJ International Holdings is the holder of 2 investigational new drug applications that we applied with the Food and Drug Administration. And we know that the medicine works. It's manufactured from specific genetic cultivars. And we take the essence out of that and run it through protocols that we developed to come up with a 2-to-1 ratio of THC to CBD. And let me just say other stuff. We had to go through a lot of testing on that to prove to the FDA that we were able to manufacture that soft gelatin capsule consistently each time that we do it, and that the essence inside that gel cap was stable. So we have to prove the shelf life and photosensitivity and a lot of things that none of these companies probably ever thought of, or none of the states require that these testings to be done to get an FDA approval as a medicine and take it through clinical trials. Currently, the FDA has been working nicely with us. We're working through getting what they call a CMC hold, which is a chemistry manufacturing hold, because they have some questions about how we went through the process of manufacturing to get to the extracts. But we're working through that. We hope soon we'll have the hold released, and that gives us the ability to insert our medication into human subjects in the clinical trials. We're starting off with Huntington's disease. Huntington's disease, the main symptom is chorea, and the patients will get that dance-like symptom, and it stops it, and it gives them an overall feeling of betterment. They relax more, and we're not saying that it cures it, but we definitely know that it has an impact on it. So that drug for Huntington's could be used in multiple other situations, but we can't market it or sell it. I mean, both of my parents passed away from Parkinson's disease, so I'm sure that it would have helped them in the late stages of that disease.
Yeah, definitely.
So we're taking the federal route on this. We've stayed in the federal lane. We haven't come out of it. We know what the law is. We followed it, and I never thought that an agency like the Drug Enforcement Administration would be so corrupt that they would either ignore it or do whatever the hell they want to do and not follow their own rules. But that's where we are now.
I always tell people, don't expect the government to be here helping. A lot of things that the government touches just goes to shit. And, that's just how things work. And so don't get me wrong, every now and then they get something right, like when you throw spaghetti on a wall. But, for the most part, you want to be very wary when you want the government to get involved, in certain things. What's up, Gino?
No, and it just reminded me of something that President Reagan said once, because I'm that old enough to remember it. That some of the scariest words ever to hear or I'm from the government and I'm here to help.
Yeah, exactly. And that's something that scares me. That's kind of what it feels like kind of what they're doing, huh, Duane? It's like, I'm the government, I'm here to help.
Yeah, gee, no thanks. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. You and I can remember that, Duane. Chad's too young.
A little bit, I'm an 80s baby, so. But yeah, and I'm not surprised by that at all. That was something that kind of I knew was going to happen with anybody that kind of went through this process and everything. And you and I, we connected because I was trying to get information on Bright Green, who was operating in a similar capacity here in New Mexico, which we found out was essentially a scam. And they're no longer operating here in New Mexico at all. And the huge grow that they build is just out there rotting. I had the mayor of Grants on not long ago, and he's like, yeah, dude, it's like rotting out there. There's, nothing going on. Because the mayor of Grants also has a cannabis license too on top of it. So I call him the greenest mayor in America.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so he knows what's going on and everything, and he's very pro cannabis and very very progressive in that sense and everything. So it's a cool guy. Shout out to him. But yeah, we connected through that, and I found out Duane, is got a little bit further. You're willing to at least share with us what's going on where you can and everything, and I appreciate that, man. And so where you guys at right now with everything going on? I know we had that huge announcement with Schedule 3, and usually I go more down with my guests and everything, but you with your experience with Schedule 3, and I really want to touch on that too, and we can go back and how your cannabis love got started and everything, unless you want to cover that right now.
There's been a lot of hype on the rescheduling.
Yeah.
And a lot of false information that's put out there. And I'm not saying that we know it all, but I'm going to say that for the people that think this is a gravy ride and it's going to pump the value of their stocks up or whatever, I can tell you're going to be sadly delusional when this thing gets going, because it's not all. Be careful what you wish for. So when you read the 2020 DEA regs that were published in the Federal Register, there are several points that come into conflict immediately. So you have all these multi-state operators. Now, Verano put a press release out today that they had applied in there to get an API bulk manufacturing registration. So this is what happens. Anybody in their organization that has a criminal record as far as a drug conviction, boom, you're out. The rule also says that if you've already growing or doing an activity or dispensing in a state, although legal in that state, it's federally illegal and you haven't demonstrated the responsibility to ever have a federal license, you're out.
Wow.
So now you have these people coming in. So, what is the DEA doing? You took all these dispensaries in, federally illegal activity. You're registering all these people, social security numbers, you identified them. They're issuing controlled substances, although legal in the state, that are federally illegal. That's a serious charge.
Yeah.
And now by coming into their system, you're making an admission that you've done that.
Yeah. And so it just makes it easier for the federal government to go in and fuck everybody up.
It's serious stuff.
Yeah.
Now all these big corporations coming in, like Verano. I mean, I don't know how many states they're in. I don't follow them that close. I'm using that as an example because I saw the press. They issued a press release today. And I'm laughing to myself. I said, they got attorneys. Do they not read the 2020 DEA final rule?
Yeah.
Which is, the president can't sign an executive order and make that go away.
Exactly.
He can sign it, right? So I don't know what the DEA is going to do. I could tell you that the people that work for me that are retired from the DEA, and one of the questions is in the questionnaire, have you done anything in a state, legal in the state, but federally illegal as far as dispensing or growing a Schedule I substance? And if the answer is yes, boom, you're done.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's like
how are they going to handle that?
Exactly, because here in New Mexico, we had expungements and stuff like that, and we allow people with certain backgrounds, legal backgrounds, they had prosecutions and stuff, to be in the industry. So that might literally knock out a huge chunk of the people that are even here in New Mexico to even be, qualified in the first place. And to be honest, from what it sounds like to me, it might not be a good idea to even go that route at this moment. There's so much uncertainty right now what they're actually going to do that, I don't know what direction this is going to go. Yeah, kind of situation,
To your point, I'm aware of a situation years back where some pharmacists got in trouble and, maybe they got in a domestic with their wife or a DUI or something like that. And the DEA was going to come in and yank their pharmaceutical license so they couldn't work.
Yeah.
And they had a powwow internally and basically said, hey, look, this isn't a drug-related offense. These people shouldn't be penalized for that. And they started the process of changing that ruling.
Mm-hmm.
God, I think it took them 2 years to get that through.
Oh, wow.
So now you have all these companies coming in, applying into a system that they couldn't even process ours. Mm-hmm. They still haven't finished processing our MMJ's application to grow. They don't have the manpower. Mm-mm. How are they going to do it?
Yeah. I'm wondering that myself as well. How are they? Because this is millions of applications. This is, 40 something states?
47.
Yeah, 47. Good Lord, I didn't realize it was that high now.
Yeah.
47 states. They're going to all be sending all this paperwork in.
47 with a medical program.
Yes, that's what I mean.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
With a medical program, right?
Yeah. This is medical.
So they divided, right? You got recreation on one side not being addressed still for Schedule 1. Yeah. Now you have the rest of it coming in, and I don't know, what does Curaleaf have? 200-300 facilities, dispensaries?
At least. Yeah, at least. And that's crazy to think about how long this paperwork is going to take. This is going to go beyond the time of the hearing next month, because the DEA is going to have that hearing at the end of June, I believe, right, on this whole matter, and they're going to discuss other things of cannabis. Because, like you said, they haven't addressed the Schedule 1 thing yet. Because, like I told everybody, what was going to happen, they're going to take cannabis and they're going to separate it again by definition, just like they did with hemp. And that's exactly what they did. Is they took it by definition, and now it's medical marijuana. And so now we're in this ballpark, and we have no clue what's going on. And then the government's just figuring it out as well too. But it sounds like they're figuring it out in something that's not going to be in our favor, because even I think a congressional memo came out, or a study or something like that they want the DOJ to crack down on the illicit cannabis that's going on in pretty much the adult markets and the legal stuff, is what it sounded like to me. There wasn't as much information on it that I could find, but that's kind of alarming. It tells me that they are going to try to take an aggressive approach and take over cannabis on the medical side. I mean, I don't know what your thoughts are on that one, Duane.
No, I totally agree, and that's why we stayed in our lane.
Yeah.
The law has always been there to do what we're doing.
Yeah.
And in order to do it, you'd have to manufacture a pharmaceutical, and then you're legal. You could do all the things that people now are fighting an uphill battle to get done, right?
Yeah.
And even at that, we're still having problems. So good luck to the rest of them. But there's a lot of money going into it, a lot of power pushing it. That hearing is going to be challenged. I'm for certain. If it ever gets done, it might be a long, long time.
Yeah.
In the case of the hemp situation, the government has that all screwed up.
Yeah.
I mean, and I don't know if you're following it at all, but CMS, Medicare, Medicaid came out and they did this experimental program, which is meant to be for a payment reimbursement program.
Yes.
And they said that they were going to give each patient $500 annually to take CBD products.
I do remember seeing that. Yes.
Right. So it wasn't publicly announced, so they didn't follow any of the regulations as far as the Administrative Procedure Act. There were 2 or 3 companies that had an inside track, one of them being Charlotte's Web, and they jump out before the program was even announced and say, oh, well, we're supplying our product to CMS, ACOs, which are these healthcare organizations underneath. So if your grandmother or mother is over 65 and she goes in, she could get the products, and they say that CMS doesn't pay for it, but they are.
Yeah.
They're giving the money to the healthcare agency, and then they reimburse for it.
Yeah.
But big deal, it all comes out of the taxpayers' dollars.
Yeah.
So now you take a company like a Charlotte's Web, and there's 2 or 3 or 4 of them that are trying to get in on this or are already in on it and supplying for the program. They just short circuit the system and everything that we've been doing with the Food and Drug Administration to get a free pass with their hemp product.
Yeah.
In the case of Charlotte's Web tried to do the same thing in the European Food Safety Agency. Mm-hmm. And they denied them and said that they were creating a public health safety.
Ooh.
And they didn't meet the criteria and they were denied. Mm-hmm. Now, Charlotte's Web knew this going into the CMS program. I'm sure it wasn't disclosed. But there's a lot of politicians that have absolute egg on their face because they don't understand the chemistry, they don't understand the processes of it. And how could you approve something in the United States for reimbursement of taxpayers' dollars and then hold somebody up like us that has been working on this for almost 10 years now to do it the right way to get into clinical trials?
Yeah, and you know what, that does make sense. You know, it's not fair because you guys have literally been trying to do what the law is requiring of you, and they're going ahead and just saying, well, this is going to be all illegal. And I've warned people. I said, guys, you're not going to be able to get FDA-approved cannabis flower to smoke. That's not going to happen. You know, like they have never approved something smokable for you to use from the FDA. Like the FDA has so many advisories against smoking anything. You know, like the FDA does not play in that field. So it's going to be something like a product that you're working on, you know, that's been rigorously tested. It's gone through all of the little steps that the big steps that you have to go through when, you know, when you're going through this whole thing. And now it's being kind of trampled on by this new ruling and everything. And so to me, it's really confusing. And, you know, I have seen lawsuits and stuff, you know, popping up and everything. And I'm sure, you know, you want to jump on that one. And, you know, would you be able to update us on some lawsuit stuff that's going on?
So we, just for the record, we're not anti-marijuana.
Yeah.
We're join SAM, Smart Approaches to Marijuana, with multiple other plaintiffs. We're probably the premier plaintiff, suing the health secretary, Kennedy Oz, basically saying that there was no announcement period. You didn't give other people the opportunity to come into this. The chemistry hasn't been validated or tested, evidenced by what the EU did. That basically the action was arbitrary and capricious. And, you know, what's the deal here? It stinks.
Yeah.
Simultaneous, you have the FDA commissioner who now is out as of yesterday.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And yeah, he's gone. He signed a letter to the attorney, the lead attorney of the FDA, saying that they weren't going to enforce any of these hemp products anymore. They were just going to turn a blind eye to it. That letter came out, and then CMS rolls out the program to all the seniors.
Yeah.
And we're sitting back watching this saying, holy geez, we've been at this for 8 years. We know the processes. We know what has to be done. It's quite different than the state business, right? Yeah. And again, I'm not faulting any of that. But when you're following the playbook the way that it was published in the Federal Register, and then all of a sudden these politicians come in and try to muck it up, they created a nightmare.
Yeah.
So now they're creating a nightmare between the legal definition of hemp and marijuana, because in order to get to those extracts, I'm sure that through the process of manufacturing that it went from the definition of hemp, which is 0.03% THC, over that amount, and then they took it into the lab and watered it down.
Yeah.
Now, as soon as it went over that amount, it's a Schedule 1 substance.
Yeah.
And now it comes under the DEA's authority, and they should have surrendered it and reported it. Didn't happen. So, you know.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
It's the wild, wild west.
It is, you know, and I would normally myself too. I'm like, Sam, what the fuck? But in this instance, it makes sense because to me, even I'm like, I feel like the law wasn't followed when they did this. It seems like it was rushed. There was no public comment period like there was the last time we were going through this process. They just announced it out of nowhere, and then they were using it under the guise of treaties. They said we're doing this, because these treaties say that we can, and I was kind of like, I guess, but like this is still really weird how just out of nowhere you're just like, all right, reschedule.
So you have to read the treaty. All this was done for a reason.
Yes.
And there's, I don't know, maybe 80, 90 countries that have signed on to this treaty for the drug convention, but it also entails other things. So it's not just like you can go out and break the treaty, right? So people that consult with us were the actual persons in the DEA that would go to Vienna to that treaty, and everything's in a closed loop, right? So marijuana has to be controlled the same way.
Yeah.
And that they have to abide by that treaty. And this is what all these state operators don't know.
Yeah.
The biggest thing in the treaty is quota. And quota is controlled. Let me explain it. Try to put it simple.
Okay. Barney terms, for sure.
You get in a car accident, you break your back. You go into the doc gives you an opiate, right? One pill. You go into the pharmacist. The pharmacist registers your name with that one pill and the doctor. Now all three are looped together. That information gets reported to the Drug Administration, I think once a year. And now you have the manufacturer sitting out there. So if you have J&J making the opioid, right, they go for quota.
Yeah.
So the deal is, how many Chads were there that broke their back that got a pill? So let's say there was 100 of you, right? So you needed theoretically 100 opiate pills. So those 100 people are all tied in, and all reports back to the DEA. The DEA goes to the United Nations Drug Conference and says, hey, we need 100 opiate pills and maybe 150 for the next year. And they said, okay, no problem. Boom, here's your quota. And that's all she wrote. So you can't make 200 pills because the manufacturers don't have quota to manufacture the pills.
Got it. So they have to essentially guess how much they need every year, with the current data that they have. And then if...
Exactly.
And you're limited to that number. You can't get any more.
Yeah.
Right. So now let's back up into the marijuana business. So all these state operators are rushing to file into something that they don't meet the criteria, but they also don't meet quota.
Yeah.
So how do you meet quota? You meet quota with MMJ International Holdings. So the first question they would get from the DEA quota person is, and Royal Emerald out in Palm Desert went through this.
Yeah.
They acquired a Kmart building. An investor came in. They paid, I don't know, $1 million for it. Redid the whole thing over and did all the grow rooms. Went out and borrowed $17 million. I think at 15%, the payments were $175,000 a month.
Good Lord.
The CEO of the company picks up the phone and calls the DEA, gets the person in charge of quota, and says, hey, we want to order 30 plants to come in from Canada. Well, Mr. So-and-so, do you have a doctor that needs 30,000 plants? Well, no, not really. We just want to make sure that our technique is right and watch how it grows. Well, I'm sorry, we can't give you 30,000 plants. Do you have a doctor that has a clinical trial? Well, gee, no. Are you manufacturing a pharmaceutical or a medicine? Well, gee, no. Well, I'm sorry, we can only give you a quota for 10 plants.
Jeez, that's shitty.
So now all that investment, the building sits there. I don't know, maybe they're growing 10, no more than 20 plants, if they're growing anything at all. They're out of business.
Yeah. Yeah, there's no way you're going to...
I mean, you would have been better doing that in a garage illegally somewhere than trying to do it the right way, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So this is the exact same thing that's going to happen to the state operators. Oh, we want a federal license, so we're going to grow. We got all this square face. What are you going to use it for?
Yeah. Interesting. Because, here in New Mexico, we kind of set it up to where we'll be, I guess, better when the federal laws come. But like listening to what you tell me, there's a lot of gaps that we have in our system that doesn't meet that at all. And there's a lot, and there's huge ones. And so I'm sitting here thinking, before I was like, okay, maybe we'll be all right. And it's kind of the, the light switch kind of situation that we're talking about, but it's not. It's more like a keypad, and we don't have the code to it. And that's like the shitty part, because I don't even think they have the code to it. Right. You know what I mean? It's behind this wall that no one could get behind, because one, the government just discovered it too. We just found out about it, and no one really knows how to get into it. And so now we're kind of...
I forgot my Bitcoin password.
Oh, yeah, that would suck.
Yeah.
Oh, did you really?
No.
Oh, no, I thought you were being for real. I was like,
no, I don't.
No. Oh, that sucks.
I had the opportunity to buy some a lot years ago, and I didn't. Now I regret that. But that's a side note right there. No, it's a government bureaucracy that just blows your mind. And if nobody pays attention to it, you end up with things like what Duane was saying. You know, you spend all this money to do something, and they say, well, we'll send you as many plants as we need.
Yeah.
Not as many plants as
you need. The
thing
that gets me, Chad, is that, they hire all these smart attorneys. They're supposed to know everything. They're doing it state licensed. That's fine. I get it, right? I'm not anti-marijuana. I'm not incompassionate to helping people. But why aren't these lawyers properly advising their clients?
I agree. Because
there's major issues here. It makes us a lot more valuable to somebody that ultimately we may or may not partner with, because we have created the golden key to the access.
Yeah.
So in other words, if you think about it in our position, we have done the science on how much fill is needed for every single one of those gel caps. So when we get approved for Huntington's disease, I'm talking billions of gel caps.
Yeah.
Right? We'll be kicking them out like ibuprofen. But I need the essence of the plant. So when you back into when we started this process, how much does each plant of the genetics that we use give off in the fill? I need over 1 million square feet of growing marijuana just to support what I'm doing, and then some.
Yeah.
So every clinical trial that we do, I need that appropriate amount to match up to it. So I know that when I'm saying the light bulbs may go off or may not, where people will say, hey, Duane's full of crap, he doesn't know what he's talking about. Go back and read the 2020 DEA rules published in the Federal Register, and read the United Nations Treaty and see what it says. And then let me know what you're going to say after that.
And I'm going to do that myself. I do that because I'm a nerd, but I'm definitely going to go and read it myself too, to get a better understanding, because, I knew this is going to be the case. I knew there was small little details that we weren't missing. And to me, it was almost like, I don't know if I can really trust you, federal government, with your sign up with our portal thing, and so I've kind of been weary, and I've even told people, I was like, you can do it. Just be cautious. That we don't know what's going to happen, and to be honest, the government's still figuring that out. So, like, where do you sit on it? I don't know, but I wouldn't trust it just yet until we get more information, because I don't even know what's really going to happen in the June hearing. That's happened on 29th. So, like, I don't even know how that's going to go. What they're going to say.
It's going to be challenged.
Yeah.
I'm for certain of it.
Yeah.
And the timeline on that, I don't think President Trump will be president by the time it works its way through the system.
I agree with you, because we started in a different administration when this all, I think 2022 or 2020, 2022 is when this all started. And so, we already went through one administration. Yeah, we're more than likely going to go through a whole nother one. And I think people think this is something that's going to be fast. And I said, this is going to be a long process. Like, there's going to be a lot of stuff that we have to go through. And, I didn't mention the litigation stuff, because at the time there wasn't, any word of it. But now there it is. There's a lot of litigation. I have a feeling that more is going to come down the road too, because they should do it the correct way, because they force us to always do things the correct way. And if we don't do it the right way, it ends up going to court, and then everyone loses a bunch of money, and it's a big old mess. Kind of like the states that, are very limited on the licenses on the adult use side. There's always lawsuits going in. Someone's always suing somebody because they didn't get picked in the lottery, and blah, blah, blah. And it causes all that. So what's up? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, so I just, I want to thank you, because a lot of these commentators, podcasters, and what have you are coming out with a bunch of hype to pump and dump these stocks, and they don't know what they're talking about.
No.
And the serious investors, listen to them, and maybe they're buying a shorten or whatever they're doing to make a buck. But if you're really a serious investor, don't believe what you're hearing with these people.
No.
Read it for yourself, because they don't know what they're talking about, and they're just trying to pump.
Well, I appreciate that, man. And I always, promote my listeners to, read things for themselves and come to their conclusions on things. Of course, we all have our own opinions, but, I suggest always read it for yourself, read it again, come to your own conclusion on it. But at the end of the day, there's going to be a lot of caution that I think people need to. And I have yet to ever say anybody should be buying cannabis stocks, or that might be something good, because there's so much unknowns going on right now that I'm weary to even believe that the way that they have rescheduling set up right now is going to go. And, to be honest, I don't think it is. Because it was just so weird. Like, I was like, what? This doesn't make any sense. You're just blanketing this whole thing, and then you're giving this or clause of FDA approved or state medical marijuana. And it's like, what? It's like, so technically right now, as a medical cannabis holder, you're telling me that I'm legally and federally protected, but at the same time, I'm really not when I look into it, because we deal with DHS over here a lot with the border check. They haven't updated any mandates or anything when it comes to that stance yet. And so the DOJ, maybe they would be okay with it, but DHS is definitely not still. I made a joke meme a while back that, had like the Forrest Gump thing, and it was like, and just like that, all the cannabis going through the border check became medical marijuana. And so, that was the joke at the time. I was like, it's probably not going to happen, but I could see that being the case if this is really the way that they're going to go. People are just going to be like, this is medical marijuana. Because here in New Mexico, there's really no distinct difference between the two. In the packaging, the only difference is in edibles. Edibles are allowed to be more than 100 milligrams, and that's it. That's really the only difference. So it's like, who's going to stop them from doing that? So yeah, I think, thank you for bringing that up too, because I think people need to hear the hard truth, of what this really means, and to not, throw all your eggs into one basket that you don't even know where the basket's going to go.
And I also want to, on the record, say that I'm not anti-cannabis. Our companies are not anti-cannabis.
Yeah.
I mean, we're dealing with it to manufacture a pharmaceutical.
Mm-hmm.
I'm anti-chaos.
Yeah.
Just because I joined Sam in that litigation doesn't mean that I'm an advocate for everything to stop marijuana, because that's not the case.
No, 100%, right? And I'm with you on that. And to be honest, in this instance, I see nothing wrong with that, because I'm with you. I'm anti-chaos as well, and anti-bullshit. And all this is going to do, and what it's already doing, is bringing up a bunch of it. Tons of it. And if we can stop it, great, because this is not the route that we should be going for cannabis when it comes to this in this direction. It needs to be done in a better way. For the adult use, we're going to have to wait for descheduling, or, some kind of decriminalization on the federal level. And then on the medical side, they're going to have to go in and figure out the FDA stuff too on the side of that, because there is a space for, cannabis that's FDA approved. And I think that's great, especially if it's made from the cannabis plant and it's made, with all the great stuff that's in it, and it's not like watered down by a bunch of chemicals, all the good stuff, and it's tested and it's safe. I don't see anything wrong with it. They do it with a lot of other things. I mean, they have, with the psilocybin stuff going on, they have synthetic psilocybin that they can make now today, right. And it's it's a little bit more accurate, more pure. People can argue all day, well, there's other stuff in the mushroom that this and that, sure, cool, whatever. But on the sense of an FDA approved thing, that's the way it's going to have to go. And there might be a world and a time where we have both choices, and I think that should be the way it is. If I talk to my doctor and he says, if you use Duane's product, you might feel a little bit better, and I'd be like, I know Duane, I trust that, thank you. And so I go and I use it, cool. But if I also use a balm from the dispensary for my knees, by all means too, I should be able to do that as well. That's just like buying Bengay from Walmart and everything. That's kind of how it should be in the same sense. There's a way that both worlds can exist, but the way that we're doing it right now, there's no way. And
no way.
Yeah, and we're seeing it already with like this hostile takeover. We have the denials from certain countries. With Charlotte's Web stuff, and then we have Congress even coming down and being like, "Hey, DOJ, you need to do something about this, psychoactive stuff going on." Of course, the attack on hemp on top of it too. That's coming down later this year too. The change on that. So I mean, the way that it's going just isn't in our favor right now. Don't get me wrong, the media is not making it any better either with the CHS stuff and all the other scare articles that they're putting out. I just think that I kind of hope that you guys prevail in this lawsuit. I have never once backed Sam in a lawsuit, verbally or publicly, but in this one, I think I will, just for the simple fact that I have a feeling that we're going to get fucked more than we're going to get hugged. And it's not going to be in a good way.
The judge has to make a serious decision. I think he'll do the right thing.
Yeah, I do too.
If you want to read the case, you can go in on, there's a bunch of periodicals out there on it, but you could actually read the pleadings in the government system, the PACER, you can pull the case down. It's very interesting to see what's going on internally.
Yeah.
And how the government is trying to argue all the things they wanted done before, just opposite now. Out of all those plaintiffs, MMJ is probably the premier because we have real economic harm. They're trying to argue that we don't have a product yet, even though it's manufactured, it exists, and we have the FDA hold on us, right, until we go into clinical trials. But their argument is extremely weak.
Yeah. That seems to be the case lately.
You can't take a company that spent over $10 million on developing a pharmaceutical and say they don't have a product.
Yeah.
They're following the guidelines through the process,
Yeah. To their rules.
By their rules.
Yeah. And that's the same thing that, in our next conversation that was essentially happened is this company followed every single rule to the T. And at the end of the day, they still got denied and the courts had to come in and change stuff. We'll get to that later, but, it's the same situation, and this is happening all over the place. And now, it's getting into, the FDA side, but now it's a big old fuckery, because of, what happened and what the announcement was and the way they're going about it. And I have never been a favor of the Schedule 3 process and the way that they've been doing it, just for the sole fact that I was afraid of this being the case when it came down to it, because, I've worked for the government, I was in the Army intel guy, the clearance and all that shit. So I know what the government's capable of. And a lot of the times they don't really do a good job at helping us, when we actually need it. It's usually helping a very few set people along the way versus the whole picture. So there's a lot of smoke and mirrors that happens, I've noticed, and it's happening here, and we need to stop it. And it's people like you, I got to think, that's going to help us at least get us back on the right track. Like, people were excited and I think blinded by the fact that they thought they were going to get tax relief from this. Like, we're going to get tax relief. We're not going to pay 280E anymore, at least on our medical side of our dispensary, blah blah blah. And that sounds good on the surface, but when you look at the ingredients and you look at the fine print, it's something totally different. And
that's right.
Yeah, and that's why I'm glad that you brought up that we should go back and read the DEA ruling or rules of 2020, and then go back and read the treaties and everything too, because I kind of went through them, but I think going back and actually reading the actual treaty, what it says, because on there it did say that the government must have a monopoly on these, and I was like, well, how does this, really fit in that sense? And I saw that there was like an exception somewhere or whatever, but I'm like, but this still doesn't make any sense. Like, it just doesn't add up, like there's a lot of like, well, we're just going to do this because like we said so.
Well, when you read it, to your point, right? You have to take the marijuana, sell it to the DEA, and then the DEA has to tack their fees on it to pay for the people to administer the program, and then sell it back to us for its final destination and use.
Yeah. And like, when I read that the first time, I was like, oh shit. I was like, that's fucked. That is not something that's, business friendly in a sense, that is a pure kind of medical, model. And I think most dispensaries wouldn't want to do that. And to be honest, most have told me that if I have to do that, I'm going out of business. I'm going back to the traditional market. Like there's no way I can afford that. And I even warned people, I said, we don't even know how much it's going to cost for you guys to come into compliance in the first place when it comes to this. Like, you're going to have to change your whatever you're doing in some sort. The federal government's going to come in and not be satisfied with something that you're doing that the state says is okay. You guys aren't putting that into the whole equation and everything, and that worries me because I know there's going to be someone that's like, yeah, we applied for it, but the FDA came down and told us we have to pay $20,000 for like an exhaust system or something, or $50,000 for this thing because it's not up to code, or federally this expires every whatever years, and so we have to get a new one through a certain manufacturer. It's something stupid. The government does it all the time.
So I'll tell you one story. We had an idiot come in from the DEA, and I'll mention his name, Tom Cook. He was an agent out of Providence.
Yeah.
And he was our investigator. Oh. And we have a DEA vault.
Yeah.
So the idiot goes down to town hall and he pulls the specs on the building to see if the level of concrete underneath the vault meets the federal reg. He says it was an inch short, right? And then now we could have fixed that with concrete sensors inside the vault.
Yeah.
So the theory is somebody would come outside the building, burrow a tunnel all the way up underneath the vault, and then blow the floor to get at the drugs. Now, a sensor could have stopped that because it would have sensed and triggered all the alarms, right?
Yeah.
No. What is it? He doesn't read that part of the law when we're on the call.
Yeah.
He makes us dig up the floor of the vault, go all the way down, pour concrete, additional rebar into it to the tune of $30,000.
Holy shit, dude. Just for new flooring. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my.
Yeah,
it's stuff like that.
Right.
And it's
And when you read the reg,
curing.
it says part A, you could do this, or part B, you could do that. I kept saying to him, what about part B?
Yeah.
It says we can put electronic devices.
Yeah.
I said, this is what it says, and he kept repeating himself.
And this sounds similar to what we deal with on the state level with the state inspectors. They'll make shit up and be like, I tried this and this. I'm like, well, that's not what the law says. And it sounds like it's no different on the federal level, so it's going to be like a double whammy. It's like, do you really want to deal with that? Like even more like, something as simple as that, like your concrete was an inch off, we all know how 1 inch is so important, to some people.
Just because he was anti-marijuana, he said, let me, give him a hard time, slow the process up. Right?
God, see, that's a great example, and thank you for sharing that with me because it proves that there's going to be these unknown variables that we're not putting into consideration when we're doing this, and there's one right there that cost you over $200K just to get that fixed in compliance because it was off by 1 inch. And so, and then even on top of it,
vault.
Yeah, exactly. And then on top of it, the law gives you an out to do it some other way, and it just still, even then, it's ridiculous. Yeah. So, but I thank you so much for this conversation, Duane, and the update and everything like that. And I look forward to continuing the conversation with the Sunland Park Novela stuff. But I thank you so much, and I appreciate the update. This was actually very educational for myself too, and I'm sure Gino learned a whole heck of a bunch too. And the audience, I hope you guys learned something from this. But is there anything else you want to bring up before we move on to the next conversation?
No, I'm all set. Thank you so much. And watch the case. We're waiting for the judge.
Keep me updated, man. Actually, I was going to ask, can you send me, I do have an account to look at that. So if you could send me the case number, I can look it up and check it out and post it on all that good stuff and have people read it.
I'll email it to you. Yeah.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Thanks, Chid.
Thank you. Appreciate it. And before we move on, where can people find your website and like the articles and stuff that you put out?
The website is mmjih.com, MMJ Biopharma Cultivation, and MMJ Biopharma Labs. There's 3 separate websites.
Okay.
We put press releases out 1 or 2 times a week, and that they're out in multiple venues, so you could pull them up there. You just Google MMJ International Holdings, and you should see the whole list of them.
Yeah. I'm a part of your email thing, so I see the I see the articles come out, and I'm like, ooh, what's going on? What update do we got from Duane here? And so I was glad that, you know what, I scheduled it at the perfect time, because I think, 2 weeks later, they rescheduled Cannabis. I was like, oh, that was such good timing. I was like, we're going to have him on soon. He can give us all the good stuff. So I really appreciate it, man. And you know, nothing but luck to you. And I wish you nothing but luck. And, you know, hopefully that lawsuit will prevail, so that way we can actually get a good direction on this versus this wonky thing that's been going on. It doesn't make any sense. And I think it's setting up a lot of people to fail. So I hope that we get something in the future that is more solid for everybody, because I think there's a right way we can do this. It's just, this isn't the way.
For sure.
So thank you so much. And let's move on to the last conversation that we're going to have, because that first one had 2 and 1 on it, because, I mean, we wanted to find out what Duane's been up to, but also wanted to get that Schedule 3 update, because, I mean, that was so great of you, and thank you so much for that. So let's talk about Sunland Park. Now, I mentioned to you guys about the similar situation that we talked about previously from the last conversation that kind of matches up a little bit with this, and it's no different. So there was a lot of government corruption that happened with this situation. So down in Sunland Park, around 2016, one of the developers there in the area, he decided that he wanted to do this thing, and now it's called Independent Nation. I forget what it's called back then, because I was actually a part of this project, you know. Full transparency, I've mentioned it before, I'm not quiet about it. Around 2017, 2018, I was actually a part of this project in the very early stages of it, pretty much the ideas, figuring it out and everything. And we hit a roadblock, and the roadblock was we needed to make cannabis legal in New Mexico. And it's something that we had already been working on for quite some time. But through the years, you know, things changed and all that good stuff. And we legalized it in 2022. And I didn't hear anything after a while, you know, because it did take us a while to legalize cannabis. That was 2017, and, you know, we didn't legalize it until 2021. And so since then, you know, things kind of changed, and I figured he went a different direction, and he did. And I think it's a good direction to go, because they were going to produce everything there themselves, and then, like, you know, kind of do a whole vertical thing. And I think the way they did it's a little bit better. So it's called Independent Nation, for those of you who don't know and are not from the area. And it's just going to be a huge adult venue, essentially. They did say it might be kid friendly. I don't know, but the dispensaries can't be by state law. So there's going to be restaurants, bars, dispensary, hopefully a lounge, music venue. When I was a part of the project, when they were talking about it, they wanted like Airbnbs there, like a hotel, then like an area where people could put like their camper and RVs and stuff, because it was meant to host like really big events and stuff, and, you know, it'd be just a real fun venue for, you know, older people to go, and I guess now families. At first it was all strictly adults, but I think they have a family component, because when you go into a cannabis lounge or dispensary, kids aren't allowed either way into that establishment. So it's just going to be within that park, but a different address. Everything's going to be a different address, like a different suite almost. So that's the way that they get away with separating it, which makes sense. I mean, there's here in Cruces downtown, we have a dispensary right next to a coffee shop that sells beer and wine and pizza, and it's literally right next to each other. Yeah. So I mean, stuff like that already exists today. So people just, when they hear the way that it's told to them, they kind of freak out. You're like, oh my God, they're going to have alcohol next to cannabis. I'm like, it already happens, dude. You know, like, that's something that's already going on, you know, like right now. So now let's catch up to today. So boom. So the project's still going on, and the developer decided to, you know, ask for a bid for dispensaries to figure out who was going to be the ones operating there. Well, he selected Station X and Chronic, and if you guys don't know, that's a part of Chadcore, Dark Matter, Talk Crop. This is all public information, and they applied for it, and they were going to be the ones that, you know, were providing the services for the dispensary. And I don't know if it's going to be 2 dispensaries now and a lounge. I kind of wish one was a lounge and one was a dispensary, but I have no clue. You know, I don't know exactly the plans on that. I just know it's 2 of them, Station X and Chronica. They applied for a special use permit in Sunland Park, and they'd been going through some issues because a couple of operators in the area doesn't really like Top Crop and Dark Matter, because they're not from here, and, you know, they have 2 dispensaries in Sunland Park already. So a bunch of them have been fighting against it. And don't get me wrong, Sunland Park is the craziest part of our state when it comes to, it's right next to Texas and Mexico. So, and like literally like a rock throw away. And so to both. And so both of them come to that area to buy cannabis. About 90% of the sales goes back to like Texas and Mexico, in that area of the state. So it's very profitable too. So people are trying to monopolize that area so that way they can make the most profits, right? And so these guys didn't like the fact that they had 2 dispensaries, and now they have 2 more that's going to be set up over here. And one of them didn't get selected. It could have been both of them. One of them didn't get selected for the the contract. And so now there was a bunch of shit that went on, and there's a bunch of government corruption because one of them's from the town and everything. And then Chad Corp sued them, like individually, even city councilors that were a part of it, because in New Mexico, cities can't tell a dispensary no, like, you know, you can't open up unless it's like, hey, you need to into this requirement, whatever. They can't ban dispensaries from opening. We have open licensing here, and so they broke the law. The judge went in and said, okay, you guys, you didn't follow the state law, your processes, so you're going to have to do this hearing again because they voted it down. And there was a bunch of paid protesters there. There was a bunch of, you know, they were handing like T-shirts out and stuff. And this was no different this second time too. You go there, they were handing T-shirts out. You can tell there was paid protesters. They had actually a clipboard come by, and they said, the lady next to me told me, I was like, what is that? She's like, oh, it's the sign-in sheet. And I was like, that doesn't say the city of Sunland Park. That says, you know, it was the group that was anti-cannabis and trying to ban it. And so I grabbed it, and the lady told me she had just moved to the area. So she didn't even really know why she was there in the first place. She was kind of figuring it out. Like, I think one of her neighbors told her about it, and she went. And so the lady was kind of confused, and I could tell. And I was reading the fine print, and I said, this says they have exclusive rights to use your image in photography and video. Are you okay with that? And she was like, oh, no, thank you for, you know, I'm okay with it, but thanks for reading the fine print. And I was like, yeah. And then one of the volunteers, he saw that I was taking interest in it, and he comes and he said, oh yeah, we just give that to people in case they want to volunteer. And I was like, this shit is shady, man. I was like, oh wow. And there was a lot of like fake outrage and everything, you know, a lot of fake boos and a lot of, you know, weird stuff. They were trying to make it seem like the community did not want this thing to happen. When
you haven't even gotten to the meeting yet.
I haven't, dude. I'm still trying to get there because so much had happened just in that time. Like, it was weird, dude. Like, it was almost like being on a sitcom, you know, when they have the applause please, you know, the sign, they were just missing that component of it. And it was pretty much the same thing. And so the people that were making public comment, they were only supposed to make comments on the zoning issues. This wasn't a do you want this or not thing. They weren't voting on that. All they were voting on was the special use permit for the zoning. And so people went in there and they were, you know, arguing the wrong things. And some people, they weren't even talking about, you know, like anything at all, really. I was like, well, that was a waste of 5 minutes. And then you had like an old city councilor from El Paso, Texas that came in and was making comments about it. And like, it was really weird, dude. I was like, how much did you guys pay these people to be here? Like, that was my question, because they paid for the T-shirts. They had these people all show up, whatever. And last time they paid them up to like $50, I think, or $30 to show up. And who knows how much they paid them this time. I was going to look on Craigslist to see if there was a post, an ad about it, you know, just to see, because they'll do that. Yeah.
Some of them probably took that $50 and went to the nearest shop.
They probably went to the one that, you know, got denied. Yeah. They went to Dark Matter. That would be so fun. That'd be fucked up.
I guarantee at least half of them went.
I guarantee a bunch of them probably did, because some people, they don't care how much money you're giving them. They'll go, $20 is $20. Yeah. You know, like, they don't care if they're for it or against it. And that's just how some shit is. And so let's get to the vote, right? So we got this whole thing. You could tell that they were trying to influence, and they kind of did, the city council. And so it comes time to vote, and here's where things get interesting. So the vote ends up being 3-2. So it technically passed, but it didn't, because the city ordinance in Sunland Park is you have to have majority of the city council to vote yes, so they needed 4 votes. Well, 2 of the city councilors decided to sit out on the vote and remain neutral. So their vote essentially didn't count at the time. And so the mayor announced that both of the special use permits had failed. You know, the hearing was over, blah, blah, blah. And I left very confused, and was kind of like, that didn't seem right. Like, I felt like...
I put it in my news this morning.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
That was the latest update I had.
Yeah, I know, right? You saw my thing, huh?
Yeah. I was like, what?
I got an update late last night, so I'm sure by now they've made their post. And
I saw it after I posted it.
Yeah.
That's okay.
So, they vote, right? And like, I'm like, damn, that kind of sucks. I was like, I know they're going to get sued, so we're just going to have to wait for the court thing. And then the counselors that say no in Sunland Park, they actually have to give written testimony why they voted no. So I was like, just in that, I have a feeling they have enough to go forward with some kind of litigation, because I'm sure they didn't follow some kind of procedure. Well, sure as shit, about 24 hours later, I get a call, and someone tells me that, hey, it got reversed. And I was like, no way. And so, yeah, come to find out, they didn't follow proper procedure, and they're going to change this soon. And I think that's where the misunderstanding, confusion went, and there's some new city councilors. So in Sunland Park, if they sit out a vote and they remain neutral and the mayor votes yes, that neutral vote becomes a yes. So both ordinances actually passed 5-2. And the celebrations from the people that were paid and everything was very premature. And I knew, I was like, I want to update everybody what happened, but I have a feeling I need to wait. And so I'm glad I did, because now we have confirmation that it failed. And it's funny, you know, like some of the owners and stuff like that, and the guy running it, he took a picture with the shirt that they had. He got a hold of it and he was wearing it, and he went in front of one of the dispensaries and took a picture of it that, you know, that pretty much got it to say no during it. And they took a selfie after they found out, which I thought was hilarious. You know, because when you legislate your competition out, it never really goes well. You know, it doesn't look good. It's bad PR. It's bad community to start with. And you're just being a sore loser at the end of the day because someone's beating you at something. And what ticked me off was I kept hearing this, oh, they're not local. But the guys behind a lot of it, one was from El Paso, not even New Mexico. And the other is running a franchise MSO, which is as local as a McDonald's. And so I was kind of confused. I'm like, yeah, they're from a different state, but one of you guys is, and another one of you is running a company that is from out of state. So like, where's the real thing? And then they're complaining that they're too close to Texas when they're both about a mile away from Texas. And so there's a dispensary down there as well that got approved where to get in or out of that dispensary, you have to be in Texas. And so it's kind of a messed up situation. And they're like, well, they're too close to Texas and that. Like, well, you guys approved one that's already worse than this. Like, why is this a big deal?
Like literally, if you drove out of the parking lot, you had to get on a Texas road. And
yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so even if they didn't follow the procedure and, you know, they voted against it, I have a feeling the law or the lawyer would have came and, or the judge probably would have came and said, no, you guys still didn't follow procedure. This was just for a special use permit for zoning, and you turned it into a whole city hearing on, you know, whether this should be there or not. And the shirts were funny. The city council called it out, and this is public record. You guys can look it up. It's pretty hilarious. They said no to Independent Nation, right? And that's the all around project name, but they should have been no to Station X and Chronica, because that's what the meeting was there for. One of the city councilors called it out. He said, your shirts will probably say no to static Station X and Chronica, you know, because we're not hearing anything about Independent Nation today. And so I just thought how funny that was. Like, that's how paid off they were and how corrupt this was. They didn't even get it correct in the first place. So this was like just fake outrage because the people didn't even know what they were there for. So luckily this went through, because I feel like this is something that our area is actually lacking. We don't have a good venue for music and for artists to come. So we actually end up missing out on a lot of really great tours. Luckily, El Paso has, you know, decent ones, but we need something better, something made for it. You know, we can't just use the UTEP Stadium all the time for like big concerts and stuff. We need something made for that. And I feel this will fill the gap. And, you know, the issues that come along with it, you know, will come along. You know, Sunland Park is a growing city. I call it Little Dubai because of the rapid growth that it's experiencing from one industry. That's the reason why I call it that. And they're having growing pains right now, and they're going to have more. And that's up to the city to fix those issues, and for the community to come forward to give them ideas and tell them what the issues are. But there needs to be facts too. So, Duane, I'm sorry I mumbled jumbled this whole thing, but I wanted to get the information out there. What's your thoughts on all of this?
Well, I tell you, I'm in awe listening to you, because I'm dealing with a lot of the same on the federal level that you're dealing with on a municipality level, and it doesn't seem like any of it changes. Right. No.
That's why I was laughing earlier when you brought that. I was like, oh man, this is exactly the same shit.
Right.
Yeah, you got competitors going after it, and they're using corrupt systems. And even one of the city councilors is in a lawsuit still. They didn't seek re-election, and so that's why they have some new city councilors too. Man, it was bad. And Sunland Park was not long ago. I think in 2014, maybe. I don't know. Correct me if I'm wrong. If you find it out, the federal government had to take over Sunland Park for a while because that's how corrupt it was and that's how bad it was. So for a little bit, the federal government was actually running the city because they had to prop it back up again. I was like, that is terrible. So, but yeah, Sunland Park's a different animal on its own. Congratulations to Chad Corp for for defeating that bullshit thing that shouldn't have been an issue in the first place.
They still haven't updated anything in the news or
no. music's probably not going to update anything for a while, dude. I got this from sources.
Yeah. Sources. Chad's got sources.
I got them sources. The Army taught me how to do. But yeah, this information came from, very direct sources and stuff like that. So that's how I know it was accurate. And of course, I got to see and hear certain things. So look out for it. They're going to be doing the Independent Nation here, I guess. It's going forward here. They're probably going to get their licensing soon, since that zoning, I think, was the last thing that they needed to do. Yeah. I'm just excited for our new music venue, or something new for the area. Sunland Park actually has a really cool the cannabis lounge. They call it a bud and grill. I love that. Full bar, cannabis, zero alcohol, food. They have like a really good atmosphere. They do music, they do comedy shows, they show all the sports games. Just a really fun atmosphere, and just I think how lounges really should be. Just the normalization of it. So good luck to them. I will definitely be checking it out because I love music and I love a fun time, and I love cannabis. So I wish them nothing but luck. If something ever changes, it is what it is. But yeah, congratulations for now. We'll see what happens, and hopefully this sticks this time and not some other corrupt shit happens. Oh man. So Duane, you got anything for us before we head out?
No, it's really great chatting with you guys. I enjoyed our time, and hopefully I helped some people or had them dig a little bit deeper before they run off thinking that it's a panacea.
Right, 100%, man. And even me, I had a couple of realizations too during this conversation, so I really appreciate it, man. So, Gino, you got anything?
No, I just wanted to get the voice of God on and say, next time on Sunland Park Novelas de Cannabis. Maria! Juan! Maria!
Oh man. All right. Well, I love that one. Thank you so much. Thank you again, Duane, for joining me. Good luck again with everything that you're doing, man, and congratulations for the success that you have had. And I do appreciate the tips that you've given us. Hopefully it does help some people. So I hope y'all enjoyed it. This episode this week. I'll be back again next week with another episode of Ask Chad Grassy Logic, and who knows what the fuck is going to happen between then and now.
It's been a wild couple of weeks.
Fast and furious.
Yeah, last minute stuff is always happening. All right, guys. I'll see you next time, and we out. All right, shoots.